episodes, and welcome to the Red Barrels podcast. We're back. You didn't think we could do it, but we have. We've come back, and what episode is it? It's episode 47. Boof. We did it. Boof. 47. It's here. It's done. We've achieved it. Even if the episode ends now, you can't take that away from us. We've done 47 episodes. This counts as an episode, even if it's only a minute too long. You can't say otherwise. You know what? I have dreams above that. I think we can do it. I think we can expand and extend ourselves to a full episode. Look forward to that.
Wow.
It's coming right now. Right now. It's me, Alex. I'm here. Who else is here?
I'm here as well. My name is Ed, and I also intend to be on this podcast for more than a few minutes, but I can't make any promises because sometimes, life just gets in the way, doesn't it? For all I know, there could be a meteor bearing down on me right now, and it's going to take me out like it did to those dinos so long ago. Rest in peace, boys. Gone but not forgotten.
That's the bad. That's the
else?
bad boy of the Red Barrels podcast, baby. He doesn't live for anything more than the next 10 minutes, man. He's just like
Hell yeah.
live free with the birds. He's not tied down to anything or anyone. He doesn't give a shit. Who else is here?
I don't give a flying flip.
Or flying flip. Who else is here?
Me, I'm here.
Yeah!
I do give a flying flip.
Sophie's still back.
Sophie,
She's still back.
Sophie.
Sophie.
Oh, I've got this twice now.
I like to record with Sophie because Sophie is my mate.
My mate.
And when I record with Sophie, she introduces herself in 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's right.
What do you... How? How do I... Do I have to chug a drink now?
Yeah.
All
All
right,
our
it's time to
listeners,
drink on the podcast.
chug now. Glug, glug.
Glug, 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 glug. There you go.
We did it.
That was
It was
good.
a good alcoholic beverage.
Yum.
That's in
It's a pretty wild Monday.
this episode. This episode ain't haram, babe. No, it is haram. It's haram. It's not
It is
the
haram.
opposite of haram. Why is it that Jewish people have kosher, but Muslims have haram? I don't know what the
Well-
opposite of each is. Why don't they have a word for that? I probably just don't know the word. I'm exposing my ignorance. I should probably avoid the subject entirely.
I think there is a word, yeah, but I don't know what
I
it
don't
is.
know what it is.
But I can ask my Muslim friend.
Ask around.
I'm not sure what it is.
Ask around.
Yeah.
Ask around.
If you are a Muslim friend and you're listening to the podcast,
Let us know. Pop in the
What's
comments.
the
Pop in
word?
the comments. Or Jewish friends. You know the Jewish equivalent of anti-kosher? What is that?
anti-kosher.
Anti-kosher. I'm sure they've got a better word than that.
I'm sure they do, yeah.
But before we find out about that, it's a games episode. We're talking games. It's all chat about games. We did the news last week. You heard that. Guess what? Next week, more news. Yeah, that's the way around things go. But this week, all games. 100% games, nothing but games. The first up, it can only be one person. Person you've been craving to hear talk about games for what feels like a million years. A million years.
A million years.
It's Sophie.
Hi, it's me. So I
Surely it's just halal.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was wondering if it was
halal.
halal, but I don't know
Oh,
if
just haram is halal.
Is it still... I thought
Yeah,
halal was
I guess I
specific, like, food preparation
just forgot
requirements,
the
but I guess...
existence of halal. I just forgot about halal. How did I do that?
I know, I feel like I have to look that up before I start talking
Yeah,
about my game.
Sorry.
My mom is going to be very
Processing in
upset
my
with me.
head.
She's going to be very upset with me. Anyway.
Okay, yeah, it is halal if it does not contain alcohol.
So
I had thought it
Oh,
was.
yeah.
I also had the thought that it was halal, and I was like, oh, maybe that's just for food. But no, I
just
guess.
forgot
halal.
Well,
I
like
just forgot
alcohol
halal. How do
is
I
a
do it?
pot is a food, I suppose. In terms of it is a thing you consume.
So the only
But not
remaining
if
mystery
you are
is
halal.
anti-kosher. Anti-kosher is the only remaining mystery.
Yeah.
Cool.
yeah.
We'll never find out. Don't look
We'll
out,
never,
babe.
we'll
Don't
never
look
know.
out,
It's
babe.
not like the entire this at our disposal. We'll never know.
We'll never know. Let's
never
stop
know.
this religious chat.
So let's talk about me.
Sophie
Let's talk about
games.
me and the games that I've been playing. So I, surprisingly did have some time for a single game. I have not played a lot of games because I've had a very stressful month, understandably.
Very understandable.
But I did play a little bit of Dredge on my Nintendo Switch. But that's not what I'm talking about today, because I haven't quite played enough of that to talk about it. But I will at some stage, because that, I think, would be a good thing to talk about on the podcast. But no, today I'm going to be talking about a game that I played a little bit before my moving catastrophe and a little bit since my moving catastrophe has ended, because I'm now moved. I have been playing a game called 33 Immortals. I don't know. I guess how familiar are both of you with the game, other than what I've spoken about? Because it seems to me like most people have no sort of clue about it. I feel like it was quite a quiet release.
I think I'd heard the name, but I didn't know much more about it than that.
Yeah.
To be fair, I think maybe as a bit of a spoiler for myself, I saw you playing it on your stream, Sophie.
Yeah.
So I got a bit of the gist of it from that. But beyond that, I don't really know much about it. I guess when I saw you playing it, I recognized from seeing it at like Summer Game Fest or one of those similar things. I'd seen it before, but beyond that, I don't know.
I don't want to brag, but I've played 1 to 32 Immortals, and they're all excellent.
Oh, fantastic.
Unfortunately,
of course you have.
the 34th Immortals is where it gets really good. That's where it gets really
awful.
Good.
So yeah, I've been playing 33 Immortals, which came out on March 18th, 2025. So it is actually quite a fairly relevant game, especially for me.
Does that
well,
make it newer than
just...
Claire Obscure Expedition 33?
I lied, actually, because it was early access, March 18th, 2025, but it was fully released on 10 June. So it came out on the 10th of June, 2026. So that is actually really quite
white
timely.
Hot relevance, baby. White hot.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So it is
Don't get used to that, listener.
By...
Not this episode.
Don't get used to it. So it's published and developed by Thunder Lotus Games, who I'm not super familiar with, except for that they also did Spiritfarer, which I did play when that came out as well, and I really enjoyed that. I would say that the Spiritfarer is obviously like quite, it's distinctly sort of cozy, very Ghibli, heavily Ghibli-inspired game dealing with mortality. And quite cozy in that it's quite sentimental and emotional sort of storytelling. This is quite a bit different. But you can sort of really identify the developer in the animation style, because the animation style is beautiful, I think, in this game as well. Spiritfarer was really stunning. Like I said, very sort of heavily inspired by Ghibli. I feel like I vaguely remember something about Spiritfarer having hand-drawn animation, but I don't actually know if that's true. So I've sort of put that out there, but I don't think that's true. But it does look sort of very hand-drawn. It's got that sort of aesthetic to it. So I don't know if either of my co-hosts want to fact check me there, but so...
You implicitly, Sophie.
Don't
You wouldn't
do
lie to me. You wouldn't lie to me. You wouldn't lie to me.
Listener, you can take that to the bank.
You could take that. Don't take it to the bank. They will turn you away. So yeah, basically, it's I wouldn't really know how to describe this game super well, other than it kind of feels like raid missions from an MMO. And I say that as not having played that many MMOs in my life. I played a couple in my youth. WoW, not significantly. I think I played it for like 20 minutes until some other random player came up to me and was like, "Are you a girl?" And then I panic left. So I played that game for a very short amount of time.
To be honest, that seems like a wise move. Seems like a wise move.
Yeah, I think so too. And then I also had a feverish pre-exam obsession with an anime MMO called Fiesta for a very brief and embarrassing period of time in my teenage years. Don't remember it at all. It was extremely pay to play. But I think I really just got super into it because it was a way of procrastinating for my grade 11 exams. Extremely important set of exams. I should not have done that, but there you go. So basically,
We've all been there. We've all been there.
We've all been there. Getting into a game directly before you are having to write an extremely important set of exams. We've all been there. So 33 Immortals is an action video game. It's played from a top-down perspective. And basically, you're sort of assuming the role of a damned soul fighting through hell, purgatory, and heaven as you rebel against the god that has banished you there. And yeah, even the Wikipedia page says that it's sort of comparable to raid missions from massively multiplayer online games. The reason for that is basically in these 3 stages that you have, hell, purgatory, and heaven, which are named for their Italian names, which I'm trying to look them up now because I've forgotten them, but I think it's Inferno, Purgatorio, and then I've forgotten the last one.
Paradiso?
You have to say them. Paradiso, exactly. So you have to say them with a silly Italian accent. So of course, in Inferno.
Alex is smiling very smugly right now.
Well done. Yes. So you've got Inferno, Purgatorio, and then of course you have Paradiso. So in the first one, Inferno, you play with 33 other players. 33 other players. You start with 33 other players, and your goal is basically to make it to the big boss with your 33 players intact. Of course, some of you will die, and that is a price the game is willing to pay. You have these sort of chambers that you have to complete challenges. They're sort of very confined spaces where you have to defeat a certain number of enemies, escort spirits to a doorway, or destroy certain obstacles, etc., in order to complete chambers. There's secret chambers which you can discover. You can collect bones and relics. Bones are the kind of currency in the sort of different realms of purgatory, and you could use those to upgrade your relics, which will give you sort of like roguelike buffs, basically. Roguelike buffs that are randomized each time you play. And you can also use it to repair your health, remove malice, which is basically like an obstacle on your health bar that's placed there after you die and get resurrected. You can basically die and be resurrected one time per run. And then you're dead, as we've been calling it. Not just dead, you're now dead. Obviously, other players can resurrect you if you sort of bug them with your little spirit form. Kind of like, I've forgotten that character in Zelda that goes, "Hey, listen!" That one. But
Navi.
Yeah, exactly. You just kind of fly around people and bug them. And you're like, please resurrect me.
That's been most of my life, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Just
Listen, never played a Zelda game. Anyway. So basically, goal is to make it to the big boss. Obviously, some of the time you end up with like 29 players all the way to the big boss. Sick, incredible. Sometimes you make it to the big boss and there's only like 5 of you, and that really sucks. But when you make it to the big boss, it sort of has these like, predictable attacks that you can kind of learn the timing and placement of. Feels a little bit like, Soulsy in terms of learning timings and stuff like that. Nice big challenge. You also have these things called co-op abilities, which are you kind of charge over time, sort of like an ult, but often requires like at least one other player to execute. That depends on the class that you play. There's, I think, 6 different classes. There might be 8, but I think there are 6 different classes. I will double check that. And they sort of range from like, melee, support, range, or kind of tank. Oh no, there's 8 then. There's 8 then. So there's 8 different classes because there's 2 of those each. There's 2 melee, there's 2 range, there's 2 support, and there's 2 tanks. And it is really fun learning how to use each of those different classes. They have all very different play styles. The supports are sort of 2 like similar sort of mage type play styles, and it is just really fun learning how to use each of them. They feels very intimidating to pick up a new one after you've played one particular class for a very long time, but the game really incentivizes you to go out and learn new weapons and classes. Basically, you're encouraged to diversify. Yeah, and it's just been really fun. Basically, I think you can basically play in a 4-player co-op team if you want, or you can obviously play with these 33 characters. It's not voiced except for within your party, so a lot of communication is done by using a sort of communication wheel and emotes, that kind of thing. It's in like this 2D style, so the characters themselves don't like animate those emotes, but they have lots of little, drawn emotes that you can collect and put on your little emote wheel, which is very sweet. So communication is kind of fun and cute that way. Yeah, and basically the increasing challenge of the game is that as I've mentioned, Inferno, you have 33 players. And then in the next one, Purgatorio, okay, you have now 22 players, all right? So you can see the pattern here. You're now having to basically do the same thing again, but the enemies are more difficult and you have fewer friends in your run. You now only have a maximum of 22 people in your run. Hopefully you can survive all the way to the big boss with all 22 of you, but that's unlikely because you're all having to sort of complete these mini dungeons all along the way. And then in the final, Paradiso, right? Of course, you have 11 players now. It's really getting quite real. And you have to kill God.
I've worked out a pattern.
I haven't. Yeah, worked out the pattern here.
Yeah, I've done it.
Yeah. It's multiples of 11.
If there was a 4th one, that'd be like 27 people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did it.
That's
my maths, baby.
Huh?
Boom.
Who's gonna tell him? That's vibes-based maths, man. What do I always say? It's the best way to do
Vibe-mathsing.
maths. Vibe-mathsing.
I'm sorry.
Vibe-maxing.
I think we talked over the most important thing though is that you get to kill God in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go back to the nature of it all.
Yeah. So I haven't actually managed to kill God yet because the last level is extremely difficult. It presents a really, really, really good challenge. And I say that not sort of super enjoying very difficult games myself, but there is just such an undeniable fun about these gameplay loops when you play with friends. Have I played it by myself? I haven't yet. I have considered it. It seems like the sort of game that you could probably get into quite an automatic, not derogatory, automatic complementary routine with. I feel like it could be the sort of game that you might be able to like listen to something over, but I haven't tried, so don't take my word for it. You might die. But it is just really, really enjoyable. The third level in particular, like I said, I haven't actually beat it yet. I've been playing it sort of on with friends once on stream as well. Shout out to Shy Dembo and Riley and Double Scuffed as well. And it's been a really, really fun stream game as well. You can sort of, as you sort of complete missions, you're also upgrading your weapon abilities. You are upgrading, you're earning cosmetics. There is some, you can buy some premium cosmetics and stuff like that, but the cosmetics that you can like unlock in the game are really, really nice. It's clearly just a way to like support the game additionally because it is a small dev. Yeah, and I've just been really enjoying it. I can tell that there are sort of levels to the game that I still haven't quite unlocked because there are every now and again my friends will be like, "Oh, do you have this blank, this upgrade, insert upgrade here?" And I'm like, "I don't know what that is." Like, "Oh, you haven't unlocked it yet." And it's kind of shocking that like I've completed 2 out of the 3 levels, but there's still game mechanics that I haven't unlocked yet. So it seems quite well thought out. I'm sure that in the future they'll have some kind of expansions on like different levels that you can fight, maybe different layers of difficulty, I imagine is where it's probably going once I've beat the 3rd level. I imagine they'll then offer like a level 2 for each different realm or something like that. I can imagine some expansion opportunities for it in the future as well. The only concern I really have is about the gameplay maybe getting a little bit repetitive, that gameplay loop. But I do think it offers something satisfying with the sort of like infinite number of unlocks, the massive number of classes. It really does kind of incentivize replay value. And you can tell that there's room for expansion there, I think, as well, in terms of like having special seasons or maybe special, new realms, etc. to go to. I don't know how they work it with the lore, but yeah, that's sort of the technicalities
different religions,
of the game.
realms, that could
Yeah,
work.
different religions, yeah, do that, absolutely. As for the politics of the game, obviously, there isn't really a plot. The plot is very much just sort of a setting more than anything else. There's not really much of a story. There are characters that you can interact with in the sort of hub world where you do your purchases, your cosmetic purchases, your sort of management of your abilities, etc., etc. There's things called ordeals as well that you can subject yourself to, making the game basically more difficult for yourself so that you can earn more currency, like both in the runs itself versus also the hub world currency. There's kind of a lot of different currencies in the game, but it's pretty effective at separating them out and not getting them confused. Yeah, I would say that there's, not really much of a plot other than what we're sort of vaguely familiar with from a lot of religious themed, we're just trying to fight God. We're in purgatory, we're trying to fight God because I don't want to be in purgatory anymore. Purgatory sucks. I keep having to fight every day. Ugh, that's really lame. So we're trying to fight God. So there, I don't really think there's. I mean, you could definitely. I imagine you could extrapolate politics in terms of like, we're sort of rising up as the sort of 99% to fight the 1% being God here, but not really a financial 1% so much as a power 1%. So yeah, but I do think that there is something, that we can extrapolate, that we can a little bit force politically from the nature of the cooperativeness of this game. I do love a co-op game. I do just love a co-op game, and I love that we're sort of trying to innovate how we do co-op games. It feels like ever since COVID, we've been trying to do co-op games in a fresh and different way and try to innovate on them in terms of, it feels like in 2020, it was very much just like drop a bunch of players in a world and survive together kind of co-op. And then it feels like, now we've entered sort of friend slop era let's complete a task, a fairly simple task, but it becomes kind of stupidly difficult era. And this is just sort of a bit of a flashback to MMO era of these massively cooperative games working with a lot of other players with very little communication. You know, I feel like a lot of cooperative games recently have heavily relied on Discord, things like Discord, and obviously having like proximity chat, which 33 Immortals doesn't really do. It's, you know, it's you. I don't think there's an in-game chat function at all, basically. You have to use Discord if you're looking to voice chat with your friends. There is also a private lobby function where I believe you can create a private lobby with 33 of your friends or 22 or 11 of your friends, which sounds like it could be really fun for stream. I haven't managed to sort that out yet, but that could be really fun for stream of like getting 33 of your chatters in a game and all fighting a boss together. That seems like a really fun
that'd
idea.
be really cool.
Yeah, but I do just love these I love the innovation on cooperative experiences. It's something I talked about in Death Stranding as well when I played Death Stranding, is that these kind of cooperative experiences where, you know, you're not having to necessarily directly work with or communicate with people all the time, but that presence is felt. It's definitely more than that. But having to cooperate with so many players is just really rewarding, you know? And it does kind of, I think absolutely could extrapolate political themes in terms of, you know, obviously you can really feel the difference. It's extremely significant. The difference between, you know, 5 more or 5 less players when you're at the boss at the end. You can tell. You can really, really tell if you're bleeding players throughout the last boss. It is impossible to fight a boss by yourself, as far as I understand. You really do need those numbers, and I feel like creating a cooperative experience like that can be quite challenging, making it really, you know, feel substantial that you're having to work with other players. So yeah, that's just been providing me a lot of joy. I really like having to cooperate with a lot of other players. I think raids, or like similar to raids, was something I really enjoyed in the very little MMO experience that I have had. I did really enjoy those big battles where you had a role as the archer. You know, your role was to stay back and deliver hits. You had a role as the healer. It was to go around and heal other players, etc. And you sort of do your role and participate in this battle, and it can really only be completed if all of you participate evenly and equally and contribute according to your ability, you know.
Hold on.
Yeah, just love it. I love that. Love that. But also it's a lot more achievable than raids. I remember raids, like some people having to set aside like 4 to 6 hours for like MMO, WoW raids and stuff in the past. But these games basically generally last between 25 and 40 minutes, so really easy to pick up, play a match, and then put it down. It's very sort of heavily roguelike, so it feels very different every single time you play, which is also just manages to keep it fresh somehow, even though it's quite a repetitive gameplay loop, which is the only concern I have with it in terms of lasting for the long run. But yeah, that's my game that I've been really enjoying. Steady doing Immortals.
Something I thought was kind of interesting was that, you know, when the Battle Royale games started, you know, Fortnite and PUBG and all that, the kind of new element of that was like, wow, there are like literally 100 people in this game. That's incredible. And now that you're talking about it, I'm surprised they never, until now, I guess, found a way to do that. Unless there's things I'm not thinking of, like that same concept, like literally a mass number of people in a game, but it's cooperative. And it's interesting that it's taken this long for something to come up with that one, because it just seems like such an obvious route to take. Although, as I say that, I didn't think about it until you just suggested it now. So maybe it wasn't that obvious, but as soon as I did think of it, I was like, yeah, why's that happening?
Yeah. I will say,
apart from MMOs, of course.
Which
but even then, they don't
do that.
They don't have that like that. You don't tend to have like 100 people in one space at a time. There are some that do that, but like not in the same like. And also they're MMOs because they're like much wider commitments and so on. Just like a game where like what it sounds like in this and in like Fortnite, whatever, you're thrown in with dozens of people. And you're given a task to do, and you've got to all do it together to some degree or another. I'm surprised there hasn't been more of that. It seems like an obvious thing. And like, I mean, I'm glad that something's finally snapped out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, on that note, I imagine one of the reasons for that is connectivity issues, which it has had some problems with connectivity issues. Like, since launch, basically does have some problems with people getting randomly disconnected, randomly booted from people's parties, sort of randomly disconnected on your way to the last boss battle, which can be very frustrating. Stuff like that. A friend of mine who, it's one of those games that I've been trying to get as many people to pick up as possible because it's really fun to play with your friends. But one of mine had to return it basically because he intends to buy it again. But he's like, I bought it, and then the same day, every single game he played, he repeatedly got disconnected from. So he returned it and it was just like, if you fix it, and I know you probably will, but fix it and then I'll come back, I'll buy it again. So it has not been, without issues. It has had some really quite severe connectivity issues, especially for a game. The nature is it is online. It is only cooperative. So you do really have to have some good connectivity. But I'm willing to sort of forgive it in that, like, I personally haven't had that problem. I'm joking. But it's also, it's a small studio. I feel like it is quite ambitious in terms of, I imagine that is why it's a difficult thing to set up, is you have to have quite a good connection infrastructure, I imagine, to get that sort of thing working. I feel like the sort of really simplistic animation style and look of the game and feel of the game probably contributes towards how, stable that connection is able to hold up. But yeah, it sounds like if you sort of played an MMO and really enjoyed the raid aspect, but didn't really enjoy the in-between grinding of MMOs, and I feel like a lot of MMOs can be extremely grindy, this is probably a great game for you in terms of, like, it just has that cooperative social aspect, but you don't really have to sit and grind by yourself and complete missions and fetch quests with, meaningless plot, which, like, just really been enjoying it.
I also do think there's something about just the concept of killing gods God full stop in video games. It's like such a staple. I mean, famously in JRPGs, you usually kill God at the end. And even outside of that, I mean, they've kind of gone that way in the Doom games. Obviously, you go to hell in those games, but then they expanded it and you go to basically heaven and you kill angels. And there's just an interesting theme of killing God in video games. And this seems to be the most explicitly killing the Christian God game that I think I've heard about. If it's literally,
it's not like a dude with a beard and a white robe, but it is. I think it's like a giant geometric shape, but
but it
same
is
thing.
It is Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso from Dante's Inferno.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Do you want to try pronouncing those again?
Purgatorio, Purgatorio,
Yeah, there you go.
Paradiso,
Yeah.
Inferno.
Perfecto.
Purgatorio, that's got to be the most fun one to say, right? Purgatorio.
Yeah, Purgatorio.
You
It's got so many rolled R's.
You got that rolled G? That's the real pro. That shit coming out of this.
Purgatorio.
Wow.
Purgatorio.
But I do think there's something about God as the ultimate authority figure to overthrow in games. Like partly it's like a mechanism of gameplay, especially like RPGs where you get stronger. So as you get stronger and stronger, the top level is always going to be God. So that's why you end up killing God in so many JRPGs. But there is, I don't know, even outside of that, like in Assassin's Creed 2, you get to beat up the Pope. That's fun. There's just like a pretty strong theme of that in games. And I think there could be an interesting investigation into the kind of psychology and the politics of doing that.
Yeah. I mean, God is Jeff Bezos in this, and we the workers are rising up.
Exactly.
This is actually a game about unionizing, is what it actually is about. Unionizing against God.
Yeah.
I don't think that the Red Barrel's position should be that Jeff Bezos is God.
We'll have to have a group meeting about that and hash it out in a struggle session. But yeah, maybe not.
You're right. It's Elon Musk.
Of course, he's the richest one. He's the richest one. He's
a trillionaire.
Yeah. Well, he isn't anymore because SpaceX stock tanked. But
fuck that guy.
Yeah, that was fun. I think
South Africa's biggest op.
Of course. So we always forget your very personal connection to Elon Musk.
Yeah, South Africa's biggest op after apartheid, I guess.
I don't know. He could rival it. We can see we don't know where he's not done yet.
He's definitely wants to do
it.
He would love to do that 2.0.
Yeah,
so
very true. Very true. I think we're probably I think we're probably done with 33 Immortals. I think that's it. I think we killed God. We did it. We often.
Good,
We did it in a big
yeah.
collective, the best way. And now we're going to move on. I think we're done.
God is dead.
Finally.
God is
remains dead.
Yeah,
and we
bugger.
have killed him.
Yeah.
There we go. That's a Nietzsche for you guys.
I don't know how much Ken the left is going to be agreeing with us. We're not big Nietzsche boys, are we? Ed, are we? Aren't we?
Nietzsche's a controversial one. I read a book called How to Philosophize with a Hammer and Sickle, which was quite interesting. Which a lot of people have tried to synthesize Marx and Nietzsche.
Okay,
so.
well.
A lot of people try.
Leave your comments in the comment section. Leave your comments in the comment section, philosophers.
Thoughts?
Exactly.
Nietzsche?
But I think we are going to move on. And we're going to move on to little old me. Yeah, it's me. I'm going to be talking about my game. And my game has been the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Although...
Objection!
Objection, indeed. Hold it! That's the other thing they say. They say hold it sometimes.
Hold it!
Yeah, that's less good. Objection's much better.
Yeah.
Great Ace Attorney Chronicles is actually 2 games in one. It's a bundle of 2 games. In Japan, they were called... I meant to actually look this up. I believe in Japan...
Say it in Japanese?
The overall... I am. The overall series is known as Gyakuten Saiban, which means
Nice.
A turnabout court is what I believe it stands for, turnabout trial. And this kind of gets to the heart of what these games are, the concept of the turnabout. Turnabout's not really an English word, and so it's a bit of a weird translation, but it kind of comes down to the core of it. So these games are, overall, the Ace Attorney games. They're pretty much the first popular kind of visual novel that got big in the West. I suppose you could debate whether they count as a visual novel because maybe there's too much interactivity in them, but they certainly are close enough to visual novels, at least, to kind of pry open the door and open the door for Westerners in general to become interested in those kind of games. And the way they work is these are essentially detective games. In the main games, I'm actually playing a spin-off, but in the main games, the original first game you play is Phoenix Wright, who is an attorney, the Ace Attorney, some might say. And over the course of each game, there are a few cases that you go through, and these are kind of long story sections that are mainly conveyed through text, although there's graphics as well. You don't walk around or anything. It's all very kind of 2D. And these have kind of 3 sections. There's investigation, which is basically like a bit of an old school point and click adventure. You just go to locations, you examine things in the environment, you talk to people. It's actually quite a linear. I mean, the whole game is very linear, but it seems like it's less linear, but it is in fact very linear. You basically have to talk to everyone, get through all their dialogue, examine every bit in the environment that you have to, and then the game can move on. Then you get to the real meat of these games, which is the court, the trial. This is, again, fairly linear, and it's all very text-based. You are essentially reading the back and forth of your character, Phoenix Wright originally, and whoever the prosecuting attorney is, and also maybe who the witnesses are. And it's a linear story that you mainly read through, but at times you are essentially required to kind of chime in on things. You are asked questions about you've got this concept. Do you have any evidence to present this? And you have to go through your evidence list and find the bit of evidence that actually would prove that. As that's just an example. And then the most interactive bits are the cross-examinations. So you have a witness on the stand, and they've given essentially their full statement, and you go through it kind of section by section, each bit, and you can go through each one. You can press them. You can just essentially get them to elaborate more on what they said on that matter, or you can present evidence that is in contradiction to what they said. So maybe, I remember this is something from the very first case from the first game, is someone mentions that someone was watching television at a certain time, but then you have a bit of evidence that says actually there was a power cut at that time, so he couldn't have been watching television. So you present that, and that's a contradiction. And that's kind of what you work through it. So these are kind of very linear games, and as I say, they do work as visual novels in that you are mainly just reading things as they happen, but essentially you are then kind of tested on your ability to understand what's been happening, kind of laterally think about what the solutions to these mysteries are, and so on. And I say it's all murder. It's almost entirely murder mysteries being solved. So that's the general overall concept of these games. This game, the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, I believe in Japan it was called Dai Gyakuten Saiben, which just means Dai just means great, so it's quite a literal translation. And these were a spin-off set in Japan. It's called the Meiji era, and over here it's the Victorian era. So it's in the 1800s, and you are playing as the ancestor of ostensibly Phoenix Wright. In Japan, Phoenix Wright's name is Naruhodo Ryuichi, and in this you play as Naruhodo Ryunosuke. It's probably Ryunosuke.
You know.
I got it in the end. I got it in the end. I don't need you, Sophie. I don't need you.
All right.
I know because you lived in Japan.
I do also speak Japanese, yeah. But
Whatever. I got it. Ryunosuke Naruhodo. And basically, so it's the implication is he's got the same given name, or no, the surname essentially, as a family name as the character.
And what was that again?
What was
Ryunosuke Naruhodo. All right.
Ah, great. Thank you.
As the original game, but obviously they changed the name to Phoenix Wright in the West. They don't really get into him being the ancestor much, but it's basically the same concept. This is a game that actually came out originally. It's actually two games, as I mentioned. It's a bundle. The first game came out in Japan in 2015, and the second one in 2017, and they were both for the 3DS, the Nintendo 3DS. And this is a new version they made for the Nintendo Switch that they put out, and then they finally released it in the West. And it was quite exciting they released it in the West because they never had before that. And the reason given for that is that, as I mentioned, the main character is called Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Yeah, you see how smoothly I just did that, man?
Mm-hmm.
He's Japanese. The game starts in Japan. And there was a worry, it was like basically too Japanese for the West, because these games have also always had a weird relationship with where they're from. So in Japan, you play them and, they're set in Japan and there's Japanese things that go on in them. But in the West, they're ostensibly set in America somewhere. But not just America. It's some sort of weird America-Japan hybrid, or at least an America where a bunch of Japanese shit goes down a lot and no one really comments on that. So, for instance, from the very beginning of those games, Phoenix Wright has as his kind of a companion who helps him out in the cases a Buddhist priest who can channel the spirits of the dead and become dead people to get information from them. And so, okay, as a one-off thing, that's fine. But then in the second game, they go to her village of Buddhist channelers in the mountains that apparently exists in California or somewhere. And this kind of just ramps up over time. In the final Phoenix Wright game, Ace Attorney, they changed the name because they ended up having more attorneys in it. In the final one, there is a case where there is a Rakugo. Or Rakugo? Is it Rakugo or Rakuga? The theatre thing, Sophie. See, I'll check in with you, Alice.
Which one?
Rakugo? Is it Rakugo? I can't remember. It's a kind of
I think it's probably.
It's kind of stand-up comedy / one-man theatre, play theatre thing. That's
Rakugo.
Rakugo. A Rakugo theatre with a soba noodles restaurant connected to it, and they're like, this is in America. They just had to give up on it at that point. But it's always had this weird thing, and they kind of didn't have any way around it because the names of all the characters in these games are always puns, and they're very apt. If they said it in Japan, it'd all be in Japanese, so no one would get the puns. So they kind of have no choice but have it in this weird mix. In this game, they have to set it in Japan. They have to. They can't get around it. And this is why they felt that they couldn't release it for a long time. However, they really should have released it back then, because what happens is it starts in Japan. You have one case there. And then he immediately goes to the UK. He goes to Victorian London and meets Sherlock Holmes. And that is like the whole game.
Nice.
Him and Sherlock Holmes, they could have easily put out Ace Attorney meets Sherlock Holmes. These games came out in like the height of like Sherlock on TV, the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies, all that Sherlock shit that was in media. This was part of it, so I think they could have got away with it. But that actually represents another weird thing about this game, is that the right issues with Sherlock Holmes. So Sherlock Holmes feels like it came out fucking million years ago, but actually Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote them, was alive for quite a long time, and he was still writing some of them, I think, during like World War II. And as a result, parts of it were still technically in copyright for a very long time, but not the beginning of Sherlock Holmes. So there was this whole bizarre thing where if Sherlock Holmes was like totally analytical, you could say it was public domain, but the estate claimed if he had any emotion, that came from later Sherlock Holmes and therefore was still in copyright. So there are all these weird shit about Sherlock Holmes. And as a result, in this game, Sherlock Holmes is actually called Herlock Sholmes, but he is the same character.
Okay.
Herlock Sholmes. And in fact, this like kind of weird copywriting has existed for a long time. Apparently in like Victorian times, there was like a fake Sherlock Holmes called Herlock Sholmes back then already. So,
no, but how long does the copyright last
well,
for?
actually, this I think it was like a few years ago, it finally ran out. I
thought it was like 80 years after the author died or something like that.
Yeah, but Arthur Conan Doyle lived a lot longer than you think, is basically the answer.
He died in 1930. I've just checked.
So 8 years from like 930. I think maybe there was some still like works being published or something after his death. So it lasted for ages, and it only just like a few years ago finally got totally in the public domain. So they could actually go back and change the names around for this now, but they didn't. You should have just waited like literally a year or two after this game came out, and it would have been fine.
Yeah.
That was also probably part of the reason why they didn't release it in the West, because in Japan, a lot of these companies tend to just feel like they can just do copyright infringement and just get away with it if it's just in Japan. If they really do it anywhere else, they get antsy about it. So as a result, in this game, it's basically a guy who is basically like Phoenix Wright meets Sherlock Holmes and goes on adventures with him and solves cases with him. Herlock Sholmes, sorry, of course.
Right.
I thought you said something weird there. Yeah.
But it's like, it's also got like kind of, these games are fairly anime. There is in fact a Gaikuten Cyber anime that came out, just an adaptation of the games. And as a result, instead of Watson, Dr. Watson, it's Wilson. And also, Wilson is now a cute 10-year-old girl with pink hair.
Of course.
Who's also in it.
I'd like to see Martin Freeman play that one.
Exactly. You know what? I think he could do it. I think he pull out. I think he's got the range.
He's a versatile
Don't cut him
actor,
out.
yeah.
Don't cut him out. But she's also an inventor. So that's fun. So this game actually represents the return of Shu Takumi, who's the original creator of these games. He kind of took a break for the later Ace Attorney games to come back and do these. And this is widely kind of considered to be something return to form. I'm going to have to make an admission here. I have not actually finished this game.
Objection.
I'm sorry. You're right to object
Hold
to me.
it.
You're right to object to me. I have just about got through the first of these games, because I say there's 2 games in one bundle. And I mean, when I say just about, I mean literally about... I took an hour to do...
Partway through when Sofie was speaking about her game, you just managed to finish it off.
I literally have my Switch 2 right here with me. I think I gave myself an hour to do the research for the news section. And until then, I literally just got to the bit where the final case of the first game, the true villain was explaining how actually they did it all along. So I'm like, okay, I've seen the end of that. So I don't know what happens in the epilogue of that game. I just got through it. There is an issue I have with these games. I really enjoy them. I love them. But for some reason, it's just something, somehow these games are just in my head, in my brain, become associated with sleeping. And so I play them and I just start to fall asleep.
Huh.
And I try and battle against it. And I have failed many times at this game. But I've got into it and I do really enjoy it. I do think it is a return to form, at least the first half of it, the first game of it. The things it does differently, it actually adds quite a lot of new concepts, not just the setting and the time period. So, firstly, the investigation section I mentioned is always, frankly, a bit dull in these games. There's not that much going through. There's a lot of just like, you're just like looking at things until you find the thing where and like talking to people, just like trying to tick everything off the box so that the game can just progress forward. You don't actually achieve anything. You just have to look at everything it wants you to look at, and it's easy to miss something. In this area of what's called the dance of deduction, which is just Herlock Sholmes and you. In this game, he's very kind of like frivolous and kind of not terribly reliable, and he comes up with these like ridiculous deductions that don't make any sense. And you have to go on this like kind of very elaborate system where you work out where he's made mistakes and you correct them, and he just acts like that was what he was doing all along. It's a fun little bit that kind of breaks it up. A bit more into it is what's in the trial, which is, I mean, these games are really all about the trial. They're easily the best bet. They're the most exciting, because the way the trials work, as I said, it's called quote-unquote turnabout trial in Japanese. So it's just a constant thing of like, oh shit, I've solved it, it's going great. And then the prosecutor will come in with some new bit of evidence out of nowhere that just like makes everything crumble, and now everything's turned to shit, and you're, oh my God, they're going to immediately found guilty. And it's just this constant back and forth of things going incredibly well and things going incredibly badly. We're so back, it's so over and over again. It's just like a genuinely very compelling kind of way of playing it. Kind of, maybe it's like arguably not, it's kind of impure, because it is basically impossible to actually solve these cases yourself, like before you start the trial or anything. Like it's not like a movie or a book where you watch the whole thing and then like, oh, you know, the detective gives his big rundown of what's happened. And like before then, theoretically, you could have solved the mystery yourself and could have worked it out. In this, it's basically impossible. They keep like introducing like brand new bits of evidence that have never come up. And you're like, oh, but it's kind of like you just kind of get taken along with it. When I first played the first one of these, or at least the first ones that came out in the UK, originally these were Game Boy Advance games, but they first came out on the Nintendo DS. I just kind of got completely like enveloped by it. Yeah, I remember I was at university and I just started playing it, and I just didn't leave my room for like a day and a half, just binging it, the whole thing. I just could not get out of it, and I was completely enraptured by it. I've never been quite that taken by it since. I think the novelty of it really got me, but I do love these games in general. So you've got this up and down of this trial. The big changes to the trial this time is that firstly, you can have multiple witnesses on stand at the same time. And this allows you to, when you're doing these cross-examinations I mentioned, you can talk to people and you can like see what the reactions of the other witnesses are, and you can like move over to them and go, well, do you have something to say about that? It's kind of breaks things up and it's fun, but it's literally evidenced, but it's not like you're carefully watching their facial expressions. They're literally evidenced by like a little exclamation mark that comes up on the bar of the thing. It's like, it's not subtle in any way. You could not possibly miss that. But it does break things up a bit. But the kind of most interesting thing are the juries. So I'll get into this in the politics, but in Japan, they don't have jury. They don't have jury trials. They've had like tests of them or something, but I still don't believe they've adopted them yet. Since this game is set in the UK, even if it's in Victorian London, even in Victorian times, there were juries then. So for the first time in these games, there is a jury. Actually, I think they did have juries in Phoenix Ace Attorney meets Professor Layton. There could be juries on that. I could be wrong. But it's the first one in like a mainline normal Ace Attorney game. And in this, basically, this is largely just another addition to the linear story and a way of just like adding more. Again, it's so over, we're so back, where they all declare they're going to go guilty, say they're going to go declare guilty, and you have to have this kind of back and forth with each of them, which is basically just another form of the cross-examination. But now you pit them against each other. Like, if two jurists say different things, you cross them against each other. But mainly it's just a way to kind of add more kind of charm. These games are incredibly charming. All the characters are like always fun and amusingly written and have that really cool, fun little animations and so on. Something that keeps going on in this game is that, but like as I say, I've got to the final case in the first game, and in this one, literally, except for one, every single other juror has either turned up as a previous juror or is literally been a witness in a previous case, which is obviously not terribly true to the real way law works, but it's very fun. And I've been in jury service in the past. I've been in a trial. There is a certain amount of truth to the fact that like all these you go through what all the jurors think, and most of them are just like barely anything to do with the trial, or they're just like complete nonsense that doesn't make any sense. And like having been on a jury, there's some truth to that. That does happen. So I think they have captured a little bit of that. So overall, I've really enjoyed it. It's very well written. I mean, when I say it's well written, it's not like Disco Elysium, but it's like snappily and entertainingly written. And the characters are fun. And the mysteries are always like, I don't know, they're reasonably well constructed, and they kind of take you by surprise. So they're satisfying to get through. I'm always a fan of these games. I recommend anyone play through all of them. They're pretty good. Politics, though. Politics. So, as I mentioned, in Japan, they don't have juries. And in the original games, the kind of somewhat authoritarian nature of Japanese justice does come through in them. Not only is there no jury in those games, but there's just a general, it's incredible. As I said, you are a defense attorney in these games, and it is like if these were real defense attorneys, it would be the hardest job in the universe. You can't just prove it's not your, your client didn't do it. You have to basically find the person who did do it and make them confess in the course of a trial. Otherwise, you will be found guilty immediately. And I mean, I'm sure that's not actually true in Japan either. But Japan does have a notoriously like a wildly high conviction rate. Something like in the 90% is extremely rare for someone to actually get off of a conviction in a trial. So the idea that the defense attorney would be like this thing, like have to like jump through these a million hoops to possibly, even though like they're clearly proven, at minimum, there are many other possible explanations for how this murder happened or whatever. That's not good enough. And that really does come through in the kind of system. I mean, apparently this is not accurate, in the way the system is laid out. It is also not an accurate depiction of how Japanese trials work either. But I do think that vibe does come through. And that's just in the original games. In this game, the main thing is, so as I said, it's set in Victorian times, the Meiji era in Japan. And, it's the height of the British Empire. And you're a law student who goes over to London to study the world's greatest legal system, as they say in it. And quite a large part of this game is basically Naruhodo experiencing racism. Or actually, he has a partner with him as well, a woman from Japan as well. And there is quite a lot of like people saying now, like, how he's a shifty foreigner. The main prosecutor, your main antagonist throughout the game, like repeatedly calls you like a Nipponese. Like they're frequently demeaning of Japan as like a backward island somewhere and so on. And that's like, I know, an interesting concept. I'm kind of like conflicted about it though, right? Because on one level, that is probably what would have happened, right? In Victorian times, Britain was very racist, still very racist, probably would be racist in different ways now, but that's not inaccurate. But, the racisms, the people who experienced racism in Victorian London, Japanese nationals were like, I would not say they were a high percentage of it. And, at this very time, Japan is the Empire of Japan. They literally are doing the very beginnings of their own empire. They're already, I don't think they haven't like taken over Korea yet, but they're like meddling in Korea. They're doing shit to Korea. And I just find like the idea of just like, oh man, isn't it harsh that, the poor noble Japanese going over to big old Britain and facing racism. I'm like, well, I mean, that's not really there's plenty of racism to go along. That really wasn't a big element of it at the time. And, Japan's been very guilty of their own racism in the past, which is like better.
And continues to be.
Yeah, and continues. And, they do mention the Empire of Japan is mentioned a number of times in the game. But like that is literally as far as they go. They mention the Empire of Japan. They don't mention any of what they've been up to. It's worth saying that this is, I'm not entirely sure when this game is set, but I think you'd say it's probably 1880s, around then. Matthew C. Perry, not the one from Friends, the original Matthew Perry, who was, I believe, a commander in the American Navy, he basically used gunboat diplomacy to force open Japan to international or to American markets in 1858. And this was quite a humiliating event for Japan, and basically also led to the creation of the Japanese Empire. After this, they were like, okay, we've got to start doing an empire ourselves, and led on to that. So there is a certain amount, and to be honest, like something that is quite rare in this game compared to the other ones is there's a lot more, seems like there's a lot more continuity. As I say, I haven't quite finished the first one, but I'm 90% sure that there's a lot of loose threads that aren't going to get resolved, and they're going to be in the second half. So I can't say for sure, but the vibes I get is that there is a certain amount of like Japan, like plucky Japan, standing up to, maybe not the bullies of Britain, but like, the big boy of Britain, and like showing that they can be just as important on the world stage or something like that. And, that's a kind of diminutive Japan vibe that they have in the post-war period very much kind of pushed forward. Oh, we're just little Japan, we're like cute anime girls and weird game shows, man. They got some incredibly horrible shit. They had a brutal expansionist empire in living memory. I'm quite ambivalent about, because at the same time, if Japanese people went to London at that time, they definitely would have faced racism. Although I do think it is worth saying, the type of racism they almost certainly would have faced, a lot of it would have been the conflation of them with other East Asian people, Chinese people especially, right? There is none of that in this game. China is never mentioned. The fact that most people in Victorian London would basically probably think that Japan and China are just the same thing, that is not even suggested anywhere. And I think that's quite telling. But, other than that, I'm really enjoying this game. If I can stay awake for it, and I will say, this game is not boring. It just puts I've just managed to train my brain to associate playing Ace Attorney games and getting sleepy somehow. I think most people are fine with it. I would recommend to anyone that they play these games in general. And hopefully, if there's an interesting enough politics in the second half, I might talk about it next time if I finish it by then. Otherwise, I'll probably leave it. But these games have a place close to my heart, and I do love them. This is as good a Ace Attorney game as I've played. So yeah,
I've never played any of those games. I feel like they sound pretty good. I've written them down when you were speaking about them to check them out.
They joined the spreadsheet.
I haven't. No, I watched an anime way back in the day which had a similar sort of format called I can't remember. No, but
Evangelion. That's pretty similar.
It wasn't Evangelion. No, it was also a set of games as well that was turned into an anime. But
was that Danganronpa?
Yeah, Danganronpa,
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is a similar sort of format.
Yeah, they're quite similar.
I enjoyed that anime back in the day. Yeah. It's Japan's legal system is a curious one as well. That high conviction rate is very suspicious, and for that reason, don't do illegal things over in Japan. It's not going to be pretty for you. You know who also doesn't have jury trials?
Who's that?
South Africa.
Oh, really? Even
South Africa
now?
Doesn't have jury trials either. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Even now. I looked up the reason why, which is entirely sensible. They basically abolished them in 1965 because for a number of reasons, but obviously it's a racist and unequal society.
Yeah.
So there's really no such thing as a fair trial with your peers. And also, South Africa has 11 official languages, including South African Sign Language. So, like, interpreting it as a mission for an entire, a jury of people who all speak different languages individually, and also sort of lack of resources in pretty disorganized court system to begin with. But yeah, so apparently they do employ something called lay judges in Japan in like very severe criminal cases called saibanin, which are apparently sourced from like citizens, but that's apparently only for very severe cases, and there's only like one or two. But yeah, interesting. And similar to the South African system, in lieu of that, basically they just sort of have essentially additional judges or like magistrates who investigate and decide the guilt. Which for me, I'm like, I don't know. I've had arguments with people in the past over like which one is more fair. And me personally, I'm like, I don't know, seeing how American court cases go, which is like my main reference for a jury of peers is like American court cases. I'm like, that seems like an extremely flawed system of just like, hey, what's your opinion of whether or not this dude did it or not, you know? And sort of very dramatic style arguments of, you know, and there's a lot of performance involved in the American court system, which is like interesting that they've kind of employed in Phoenix Wright, where it's like there's this performance and this like, oh, you know, actually, objection, you were busy that day, so you couldn't have been blah, blah, blah. And it's just the drama of the American courtroom. Clearly people like sort of really enjoy the drama of the American courtroom.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, I've been in a trial as a juror on the jury, and
it's very boring.
It is not exciting. It is the opposite of that.
Yeah, I've heard this as well.
Yeah,
I've heard this.
I mean, you know, the whole time you're just thinking, this they definitely could have made this like 3 hours long. They could have done that. They could have. They worked towards it. Like the actual, like a lot. I really can't talk about the actual case on the podcast, but you know, I remember a large amount of it was like agreed upon by both sides. Like, was not facts of the case were not disputed by either side, but they still like showed us CCTV footage of it happening and shit. And I'm like, why are we watching this? No one is disputing this happened anyway.
Yeah,
it would have been.
It's not like 12 Angry Men, it turns out, which is like one of my favorite movies, but it's not like that, actually.
Good movie.
Unfortunately not.
Fantastic movie.
Well done, Sophie, on your excellent taste.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
It's a really good movie.
Congratulations, Sophie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably what I've got to say about the Great Ace Attorneys Chronicles. So probably move on. Right?
Who's left?
Sounds good.
There's only one of us left. There's only one left.
I'm left. Ed's left.
Oh, yeah.
Put up a pew, guys. It's
well, no,
it's my time to shine.
I come from a country with no juries, so...
Oh, and no churches, apparently.
And no churches.
Well, let's move on to my game, because I am going to be talking about Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy.
Wow. I love Jak and Daxter.
Which is a game that I know that you got some experience with, Sophie, so I'm looking forward
very, very fond experience.
to your insights.
I've also played it, but I guess I was less excited about it when you told us earlier.
I'm not looking forward to your insights, Alex. Not at all. I'm scared
at
of
the very
them,
least,
actually.
not that nostalgic.
You strike fear into my heart. Right. Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy is a 2001 collectathon platformer developed by Naughty Dog. In it, you play as Jak, who's a silent protagonist, who is looking to help his very unsilent friend Daxter transform back into a human. In order to do so, he needs to travel across the world, collecting power cells as they go to let them get to the next area. Spiritually, this is a follow-up to episode 29 of the podcast, when I played Crash Bandicoot, the game that put Naughty Dog on the map.
Lap it up, continuity.
This was their first.
Lap it up.
Yeah, exactly. Mark that one down in the logbook. This was their first game after leaving Crash. So you see, Crash was owned by Universal, and so the profits and creative control for the Crash games was split between Naughty Dog, Universal, and Sony. So while most of Naughty Dog were working on Crash Team Racing, a small number of them began development on a series that they could have more control over. Hence, Jak and Daxter were created, effectively to replace Crash. During its development, Naughty Dog were also sold to Sony, meaning that Jak and Daxter would be owned by just one organisation rather than split across the three like Crash was. So back to the game. As I said, in this game, you're collecting power cells in order to advance to the next area. There are 101 in the game, but you only need 72 to finish the story. I mean, I say story, but the story is pretty minimal in the game. Initially, you're trying to turn Daxter back into a human. He spends the game perched on your shoulder, having been transformed into an Otzel, which is a fictional combination of an otter and a weasel. This happens in the opening cutscene when he falls into a pit of dark eco. Eco is this energy in the game. It comes in many different colours, but practically how it works in the game is it works a bit like a power-up. Like you find it in the game and it gives you some sort of ability relevant to the area, or there's also green eco, which heals you basically. And this is basically all explained. Almost the entire story fundamentally happens and is explained in the opening cutscene of the game. And you learn that this eco, this world's life energy, was originally harnessed long ago by a now lost civilization called the Precursors. You then hear that the sages who know all about eco are being they're disappearing from the game. So you want to find those guys because they might help you with Daxter, but they're disappearing. So you got to go find them. And there you have it. That's the setup of the game. That's the whole story. And it's maybe it's one level above a Mario game story-wise, but you're certainly not going to be playing this game for the story. I'll tell you that much up front. So the power cells can be gained in many different ways, but probably the main ones are sometimes they can be found at the end of a platforming section, or you can get them for finding 7 of these scout flies which are scattered in each area, or you can get them by trading precursor orbs for them. Now, precursor orbs, they're a bit like coins or something in Mario. They're a very common, very abundant currency. They're kind of everywhere. You'll just pick them up navigating throughout the world. And there are lots of NPCs in the game who will trade you 1 power cell in exchange for 90 precursor orbs. So that's the exchange rate. 90 precursor orbs to 1 power cell, or 7 scout flies to 1 power cell. That's the situation. These NPCs will also sometimes give you a little quest, which basically just serves to point you in the direction of a power cell. But I didn't really do too many of those, but basically you just come across those exact same power cells just by exploring the game. So you don't need to do any of the quests, really. But I do think it's good to have multiple ways of discovering things. So as I referenced, you're not just collecting these power cells, you're also sort of mentally keeping track of scout flies and how many precursor orbs you've got. And one good thing I like to say about the game up front, I think it does a very good, very clear job of presenting what you found so far in a particular level. So you know what there is left to find and what you've already got. And it just sort of helps you keep track of where you are and know maybe it's worth moving on to a different level now because you've already got almost all of them in this level and it's going to be difficult to find the last ones. And I appreciate that. I played some games like this before where you're you can be left scratching your head sometimes as to is there really more stuff worth me exploring for in this level or not? And that just doesn't come up in this game. Very simple, straightforward, tells you all you need to know. So I appreciate that. Between you and these things you're trying to collect, you run into enemies called lurkers. But pretty much across the entire game, all the enemies, apart from the very small number of very easy bosses, virtually all of the enemies can be beaten by hitting them once. So again, combat is not what you're coming to this game for either. So beyond these 3 main methods of getting power cells, there is also a great deal of variety in the game, various different ways you can progress. For example, there are these vehicle sections, either on a hover bike or riding on the back of a bird. There's a fishing section in the game. There's a first-person shooter section in the game. There's a racing section and loads more. And these all vary in quality, as you might expect. A lot of people really don't like the fishing section. I thought it was okay. The vehicle sections I didn't like very much. You have an incredibly large turning circle. But the overall effect of having this variety is that the game remains fairly fresh feeling throughout its 12-hour runtime. The other thing that helps the feeling of it remaining fresh is there's a wide variety in locations. The areas are very clearly distinct from one another and they're well constructed. You won't find much in the way of large areas that you need to sort of pointlessly run through either. It's always varied in terms of levels. There's various obstacles to get over. And as I say, the levels themselves are pretty varied. We've got a beach level, a lava level, an underwater level, a level in the swamps, a level in the mountains, a level inside of a mechanical thing. It's good. It keeps it fresh, keeps it alive. You don't feel like you've already done everything many times over. And actually, speaking of the levels, one thing that is definitely impressive about this game is that you can travel through all these areas without once hitting a loading screen. The entire game, you can go from the first to the last level without it needing to stop to let you load even once. I mean, I guess that's not technically true. It stops to let you load, but it does that in subtle ways so that you don't notice that you're effectively at a loading screen. From its most subtle,
elevators.
It's probably when it's... Yes, there are certainly elevators in the game. I mean, I will say it's more subtle than a lot of games that do that kind of thing, even from 10, 15 years later. But at its most subtle, it's sort of the camera is framed in a specific way so that it's letting it load something a little bit further ahead. And then it's more obvious. It's more yes, an elevator, or you're on a relatively slow-moving platform for a bit, or there's one where you have to go up in a sort of what's the word, like a gondola, like a sort of thing up a mountain, and you're like, well, this is just a long load screen, isn't it? But it's an impressive technical achievement, especially for 2001, that this entire game can exist without a loading screen at all. I big respect for that. And similarly, on the theme of things I've got a lot of respect for, there's clearly a lot of detail put into the character models and into the animations. They feel very expressive. It feels like you're watching like a proper, deliberately crafted animation, like a cartoon, rather than just sort of a model running inside an engine. Like the way the animations flow smoothly into one another as you move Jak through the various movements, it makes the game feel really polished, well thought out, detailed. And there are a lot of them as well. There's a lot of very unique animations that for different situations, from stuff like wading through the water, or like the punching animation's got different variations, like all this kind of stuff. And I really do appreciate that. And the same is true of the world as well. There's a lot of sort of motion in the game. Like it really feels like you're in a place where stuff is like vibrant and you feel pulled in. And again, I really respect all that. And all these technical elements and the attention to detail does make the game feel ahead of its time in certain ways. However, there are also ways in which the game feels very much of its time, and there is even some ways in which the game feels a little bit behind the times for when it came out. So I'm going to turn to the things I'm feeling less positive about now. The most obvious one playing for me is a problem that I often have with these like 90s and early noughties platformers, and that is the camera. For one thing, just right off the top, you're locked into having an inverted camera for the whole game. And look, I know lots of people like playing games this way. Alex, I think you prefer an inverted.
I'm the genetically better one here, yes.
Being stuck with an inverted camera is quite annoying. I mean, yeah, it is bad. I've spent my entire time playing games, like 20 plus years. Coming up, I'm nearly 30 now. Like I spent a long time playing games, and all of my muscle memory, all of my instincts are telling me to do the exact opposite of what the game needs me to do just to control the camera. And that's quite a lot to be wrestling with. I mean, I don't think it should be too much to ask for just a Switch that lets you swap it. But hey, look, maybe that was too much to ask for in 2001. I don't really remember. And this wasn't too much of an issue when things were slow paced at the start of the game. Like I could do the sort of mental processing required to just flip my expectations. But when things start to get a little bit hectic, or you need to platform and like make a jump that's quite timed, like sometimes it would get in my way, and it was a bit frustrating. But beyond the inverted camera, the camera is a problem in the same way that it is for most 3D platformers, I would say, of that era. And that's especially true when it comes to the depth perception. There are quite a lot of points in this game, for instance, let's say the first boss of the game, where the depth perception really messed me up in what was otherwise an incredibly easy situation, and it was quite frustrating. The first boss, you had to like do some stuff, and then it basically created a little platform that you could jump on, that then you could like do a hit on the boss, basically. And so this platform, there's not really even any... There's a little bit of a time pressure, but nothing else is really going on. All you need to do is jump on this platform. But to do that, you need to move Jak away from the camera towards this platform. And I was just missing it again and again and again. And this is like the most simple thing you could ever need to do in a platformer, is literally jump on one platform that is moving incredibly slowly. And I was just failing again and again. And I'm like, I'm just driving myself mad. Like, I'm not the best gamer in the world, but I finished Hollow Knight. I finished Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels. I finished some hard platformers, and I'm just failing again and again to jump on one slow-moving platform at the start of this game for small children.
Call yourself a gamer. Unbelievable.
I'd be considered it was getting good.
So annoying.
Good.
It was so annoying. And I think, honestly, it would be fair to say, I mean, I've mentioned that the combat is quite simple and there's not that many bosses. I genuinely think the hardest part of the boss fights in this game is this depth perception issue. Like, it's the only thing that posed any challenge, and it's not a place that the challenge is meant to be coming from. And it extends beyond the bosses, of course, as well. Like, with the camera, you've got some movement. You can move, like, you can zoom in and out a little bit, and you can, like, move it around a little bit, but you can't really ever move it up and down. So there are lots of points in the game where what should be relatively simple jumps turn into, like, massive leaps of faith, because you're meant to be jumping onto something below the level that you're currently at. And there's no way of you checking what's beneath you. And the thing is, I feel like the designers knew this was an issue, because most of the game is constructed with this in mind. Like, there's got fairly large platforms. It's not asking you to do very much. So it's not really a problem for 95% of the game. But that 5% of the game where it does come up, like, it's quite annoying. And that is still quite a lot of the game to find annoying. The camera issues also compound for me with some of the moves that I found a little counterintuitive. There's a double jump, which is like a super common move that you need to do in the game. And as with lots of games, you have to do the second jump just a little bit before you hit the apex of the first jump. But it's just like slightly off rhythm from where I would sort of have learned from years of playing games of where it should be. So that I very frequently was doing my second jump, except it was like apparently too late. So Jak just plummeted to his death. And it's just like the rhythm just never quite sat well with me for that. That plus the inverted camera stuff, plus the depth perception, it just all added up to like quite a bit of discomfort in what was otherwise an incredibly easy game. And the area that epitomized this the most to me was an area of the game relatively late on called Spider Cave, which I enjoyed the vibe of. Like, it was creepy, sort of dark, like slightly murky, and full of spiders, obviously, and I liked that, but it brought a lot of my frustrations together in one section. There's a particular bit where you need to light a torch to give you enough light to make your way through a platforming section, moving quickly enough that before the torch runs out, you get to another light source, and then you can do, rinse and repeat. You do that a few times, you get a power cell. So this means that you need to move fast, but you're doing some platforming, and the way that it's constructed, a lot of the time, there are these platforms sort of moving away from you. So I haven't really got time to work out like the depth. You then need to jump off the platforms without always having a clear view of where you're landing. Sometimes it's not clear where you're even meant to be going next because the camera's not showing you where the path continues to. And at the end, there's this very large jump that you need to do using all of your little jumping tricks to get the maximum height. But the floor is collapsing underneath you, so if you don't do the jump almost immediately, then you're going to die. And I was just consistently failing this final jump over and over again to the extent that I was sure that I was missing something, and I just started like jumping into random bits of the scenery to see if that was actually secretly a platform I was meant to be landing on. Like, I really convinced myself that it was something more than just doing the jump because it just wasn't working. But I guess I just was bad at it, and like it was just really frustrating. Like, it was all these things combined, and I'm just doing it over and over again to the extent that more than 10% of my time spent playing this game was spent on this one section, this one power cell. And as I say, there are 72 power cells in this game. So to have spent more than 10% of it on one random one in the middle of the game, man, that sucks. It wasn't fun at all. And of course, you'll be screaming at me, there are 72 power cells that you need to get, and there's 101 in the game. Why didn't you just go get a different one? Because I'm too stubborn, okay? You've got me. It's my fault. Maybe I should have done something else.
You need to show Jak. You need to show Jak who's boss. You need to know you're the boss,
you need to
not
show Jak who's boss. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up, am I? I'm going to keep going until I get this power cell, Or else I'll never be able to look at myself in the mirror ever again. And as a result, I had a bad time. And maybe that's on me. But also, maybe they should have fixed the camera. Maybe the control should have been playtested a bit more. I don't know.
Ed, I'm promoting you back to true gamer. Don't worry.
I appreciate that. And yeah, another way in which the game feels very, very of its time is Daxter. Now, Daxter is the comedy sidekick who makes little jokes and japes throughout the game. And this was a very popular thing in kids' media at the time. I think of someone like Eddie Murphy as Mushu in Mulan, or someone like Eddie Murphy, for example, as Donkey in Shrek. And I think Dexter's performer does exactly what they've been asked to do. They do a very energetic vocal performance. They don't miss a beat. But unfortunately, as a full-grown adult, it is not fun. It is not fun to listen to at all. He's doing this like silly, like loud, kind of sarcastic, wisecracking 90s bad boy kind of voice. And it feels like I'm watching a cartoon aimed at 7-year-olds. And I know that's because like I am. This is a cartoon aimed at 7-year-olds. But I like to be able to deny that, And my fiance described Dexter as the worst character in all of fiction.
Wow, incredible.
He's up there. He's up there.
Perhaps harsh, but he's up there. It's hard to say he's not for me would be an understatement. It's the sort of thing that if someone walked in on you watching a cutscene with this in it, you'd be embarrassed. You know, you'd be like, oh
Mm.
no, this isn't. Trust me, I'm a serious adult. I've seen The Godfather, okay? Like, you know what I mean? It feels very of its time, and maybe it's unfair of me as someone in my 20s in 2026 to judge a comedy sidekick from 2001, but there we are. I am doing it, and that's what's happening. There are lots of comedy sidekicks in media from the time, as I say, and this is the most annoying one I've seen. So there we go. I've also mentioned that there are some ways in which the game feels sort of behind the times from 2001, and that's not really about the game itself. It's more what the game is. It's a mascot platformer from 2001. So let's talk about that for a sec. Having moved on from Crash, Jak and Daxter, it was Naughty Dog's second chance of making a big mascot platform for PlayStation, and they didn't want to mess it up. They brought in people from Sony of America, from Sony of Europe, Sony of Japan, and they all consulted together to try and design the characters that they thought would be popular across the world. In the 80s and 90s, having an iconic mascot platformer like Mario or Sonic or yes, Crash was a really big deal. But in the Japanese releases of the Crash games, they had changed how he looked on the box art because they didn't think he looked appealing enough to Japanese audiences. And so Naughty Dog really didn't want that to happen again. And the result was that Jak and Daxter are seen by a lot of people in the West as looking somewhat Japanese, and they're seen by a lot of people in Japan as looking quite Western, and that's exactly what they were aiming for. So I say all that just to illustrate the extent to which they were really focused on making Jak and Daxter be the iconic representation of the PlayStation 2 era. The PlayStation 2 was brand new. This game came out less than a year, I believe, after the PlayStation 2 came out. They're going for it. They're going all in. But the thing is, Jak and Daxter didn't become the iconic platforming mascot of the PlayStation 2 era because there wasn't an iconic platforming mascot of the PlayStation 2 era. It was around this point where it became really clear that the time of the mascot platformer being the face of gaming was over. It had passed now. And I think of it like this. If you got into video games at the age of 10, you're 10 years old and Super Mario Bros. Has just come out. If you're 10 when Super Mario Bros. Has just come out, that's your way into gaming. By the time Jak and Daxter comes out, you're 26. You know? There's a much more adult audience for video games by this stage, and this is reflected in the games that people remember from 2001. There's games like the original Halo, Metal Gear Solid 2, the first Devil May Cry game, Max Payne, Silent Hill 2, and probably the most important in terms of that this completely dominated the conversation then, and you'll recognise it doing so now. Grand Theft Auto 3 came out that year as well. Those were the kind of games now that were at the forefront of gaming. This is what was really bringing people in. These were the system movers. And so putting all this effort into a mascot platformer, I understand why you would do it and I respect it. But they were making a game for a decade that had finished, unfortunately. So this game, it did well. It sold more than 3 million copies and they were able to make multiple sequels. But really, it feels like a game from the 90s. It feels like a game from a different era. It feels like a very polished and technically impressive version of a Banjo-Kazooie or a Mario 64 or Spyro, which was literally made in the same office as this game, rather than something new or original that breaks the mold. So maybe that's an unfair criticism. 2001 is barely not the 90s, but it does feel sort of strange. It feels sort of like retro, but it's old. I don't know. It just didn't sit super well with me. I don't know. You know, traditionally we say something about politics on this podcast, and there's not a lot I've got to say about the politics of Jak and Daxter, the precursor legacy. All I can say really is, the story of a lost, advanced civilization who are in tune with some kind of natural world energy, and they're like the good guys in the past in some way, and you're up against now like a mechanical industrial enemy. Like there's lots of them like robots and stuff like that. There's clearly like a soft like ecological story happening there, but at the same time there's a kind of backwards nostalgic looking kind of story. As you travel closer to the end of the game, the locations become increasingly artificial, metallic, robotic, which kind of tells you that this kind of thing is in some way dark or sinister or evil. And the final boss is a big robot. So if it has any political content, it feels to me like it communicates this sort of soft green conservatism. Like it has this like backward looking vibe, but it's clearly like progressive on climate stuff in some respect. Like, I don't know. that's all I can find in it, I think. But I think realistically, this is all just meant to serve as a shorthand, like as a readily identifiable set of aesthetics. At best, it's like a proto-politics rather than something that I think is actually like worth digging into and exploring any further. So I'm going to leave my political analysis of Jak and Daxter there. And really, I'm going to leave my discussion of the whole game there. To sum up, the game is technically impressive for the time, really, really impressive for the time. It's clear how much care the developers put in this game. That's clear from the animations, the art, the world construction, the variety of things to do. And I really do respect that. And I think there's plenty of people who would have a lot of fun with the game. But for me, I found the inverted camera, the sections with poor depth perception, the occasional unintuitive rhythm of the controls all added up to make a game that was difficult for me to really like most of the time. Like, there were bits of what I did, but overall, it was kind of a frustrating experience. The platforming was definitely limited by those issues. As I say, the combat is basically not in the game. So, and none of this is helped by Daxter being not for me. So, if you like 90s platformers and collectathons, this is probably one worth checking out. But for me personally, I feel absolutely no urge whatsoever to go back in and collect the last 29 power orbs that I don't have. So, power cells. So that doesn't really reflect well on my interest in the game. And that's what I got to say on the game. Sofie, I know that you're a bigger fan of the game than I think I've just expressed. How do you feel about me insulting your childhood like that?
No, I think it's all completely fair criticism. I think I played this as a child, obviously Jak and Daxter in particular. I played as a child. I feel like it must have been one of the first games I sort of really experienced on PlayStation 1. I remember watching my brother play it. I don't think I ever played it myself, but I definitely did play the follow-up Jak games, at least the second one and the third one, which just while you were talking about it, I was thinking a lot about those other two. I remember those ones a lot more distinctly in that, I feel like they really tried to sort of break free of the platformer genre. I distinctly remember the third one even having a kind of Mad Maxian desert driving and cars game mechanic, which was really central to it. It gets a lot grittier as well. Daxter, I think, gets a lot less annoying. And and I remember
get more annoying.
I don't remember if he gets more. I think he gets less annoying, mainly because, I guess, do you mind me spoiling something that happens? I think it's in the second game.
No, go for it.
So basically Jak starts talking in the second game. I think it's the second or third game, but I'm pretty sure it's the second game.
It's the second one.
And I think he literally starts yelling at Daxter in a moment where Daxter's being really annoying. It's are you okay? Blah, 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 blah. And then Jak is I'm gonna kill Praxis is the first thing he says.
Kill Praxis. That's what he says, yeah.
I'm gonna kill Praxis, that's what I said. And it's clearly a very obvious departure from the sort of goofy tone of before. There's obviously still a bunch of jokes, but they tend to lean a bit more mature. Jak is a much more sort of mature and teenage character. There's a love interest and stuff in the second and third one. So they clearly felt self-conscious about that feedback. I'm sure that was quite common feedback at the time, and you could tell because of how much of a radical departure I think they made from it in the second and third games. So which I think that's really interesting. I think your commentary about it, sort of catering to a long gone era. There was a sort of swath, as you said. It was Spyro, it was Ratchet and Clank, it was Jak and Daxter, and I am particularly quite nostalgic about Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Daxter especially. But I remember Jak and Daxter. I felt like Jak and Daxter grew and aged a lot better in terms of as it progressed as a franchise, because it felt like Ratchet and Clank kind of and Spyro always kind of maintained their childish veneer and sort of, continued to appeal to children, whereas Jak and Daxter made a very obvious attempt to try and appeal to a more teenage, and then at least a teenage audience. Probably never an adult audience, but at least a teenage audience. So I think that's really interesting, the way that that's been sort of really obviously implemented that feedback. I also wanted to note that the animation style is just phenomenal, as you've observed. I remember watching a behind the scenes video. I don't remember if it was on the game disc itself or if I'd seen it somewhere else. I don't remember. how I'd seen it, but I remember seeing a behind-the-scenes video about the animation in Jak and Daxter, and it is so cartoonish. I remember them talking about the way that they sort of stretch the models for each individual animations to have this really cartoonish style to it, which, of course, like now we don't really see that as much. We have like a model and it gets put in different positions and the bones don't really move, I guess. But like I don't really understand how animation works that well. But yeah, it contributes to this really distinct and really well animated cartoonish style. As you said, very, very thorough and very well produced, but absolutely kind of just catering to an era of gaming which it was immediately too late for. So I think that's a really good observation.
Yeah, well, I got this in a bundle which included Jak 2 and 3, so maybe I'll be tempted to check those out at some point. They're sitting on my PlayStation 5 hard drive ready to be played.
No pressure.
So
they are very different games.
I was mainly going to talk about Jak 2. I'm kind of obsessed with Jak 2. I find it I find it like
I loved it too.
I mean, I basically I did play a lot of Jak 1 at the time, and then Jak 2 I played a bit of. But then there's a bit in Jak 2 where it makes you do skateboarding. It literally makes you basically play fucking Tony Hawk for a level. And I never liked Tony Hawk, and I couldn't do it, and I literally just couldn't get past that bit. I was like stuck, and I was like, why? I didn't want to play Tony Hawk. But no, that game is just kind of fascinating because it's so obvious that they made Jak 1, then they played GTA 3, and they're like, oh shit, we've got to do this now. So now Jak 2 has an open world in which you can do carjacking. There's guns, and as you said, Sofie, the previously silent protagonist says his first words, and they are, "I'm going to kill Praxis." And Praxis is the name of some bad guy. And I find that so kind of fascinating. And it's so kind of weird that, while you say it felt kind of like out of time, that first game, I feel like the later games, which are like edgier and more quote unquote adult, they've aged far worse. Like all that stuff is just like, so whereas that original game, you're like, okay, well, yeah, it's a bit like a Saturday morning cartoon. I get that. As a terrifyingly old man, I can get along with that and not feel too self-conscious about it. But like playing this like kind of like desperately trying to be grown up for like 12-year-olds game I can feel the internal cringe. I felt it when I played it, and I mean I was too old. I was in my early 20s at the time, so I was already too old for that. But like just even thinking about it now, I just feel uncomfortable. You know?
And the style,
does it give like Shadow the Hedgehog kind of vibes?
Yeah, it's very like he's very edgy, and like there's a TikTok meme associating Jak from Jak 2 and 3 with like butt rock.
Very
with like what the fuck is that band called that every dad likes it? That Nickelback. Yeah, it's like very like Nickelback style edginess.
And it's
which I feel like is really evocative if you played that game.
And it's not even butt rock complimentary like the 3D Sonic games.
No, butt rock derogatory. So they're clearly very self-conscious about how childish it came across. And the second and third games were extremely very different. And I enjoyed them at the time. I don't think I would enjoy them now, but I played them a lot when I was a kid and a teenager. But definitely an artifact of their time. Yeah.
Well, look, if I play them, I'll let you know.
You got to play the first 10 minutes just so you can see him say, "I'm going to kill Praxis." Fair enough.
Life is short.
Well, you know what that means? I think
speaking of life being short,
this episode not that short, but shorter than life and the existence of humanity. This is what I'm saying: is it's over. We're done. We talked about our games.
Wait, which one? The podcast or?
We'll find out. We'll end one, see if it leads to the other.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
God, well, we better not stop then.
Well, no. We have to end. We have to end now. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth ending the universe in case. This is how we have, just to find out if we have that power, just to find out. And you don't want to live in a universe where we have that power, so you want to make sure that we know that we don't. That's basically the way it works. So yeah, it's the end of the episode, and as always, we're going to ask you very nicely, really, really nicely, just like the most nice way to imagine, just right? peachy sweet. Please share us on social media. Please review us on iTunes.
We'll
and
be
on
your very,
Spotify,
very, very
and on
best friends.
Spotify. Please. It's out of my vocal range to go higher than that. And frankly, that wasn't in my vocal range.
Go on.
So
I've heard you do much, much, much higher, Alex. I don't know why you're blushing now.
I blush all the time. I'm like an anime schoolgirl. I run out the door with toast in my mouth. Everyone knows it. And that's how sweetly I'm asking you to do that. Please share us on social media and review us on Spotify and iTunes. And when you share us, you can tell people to go to our Twitter at Red Barrels Pod or our Blue Sky at Red Barrels Podcast. .bsky.social. Me personally, you can find me at Alex Dean, AlexDuin, on Twitter, same name, .bsky.social, on Blue Sky. Ed, how can people find you?
You can find me at Not a Lemon on Blue Sky and at Still Not a Lemon on X. Sophie, how can people find you?
They can find me at twitch.tv/SoFreely.
So it's kind of
Please mind the gap.
sinister how easily you just slip into the Jet 2 holidays woman. Just
Jet 2 holidays.
Jet 2 holidays.
30% off at Boots.
I know. I worry about it, Sophie. Someday I think you'll never be able to stop doing that. You'll be.
One day I'll just talk like this all the time.
One day your closest friend will die and you'll be forced to give a eulogy.
Why would you
in that
worry
voice.
about
Just
that?
imagine that. Just imagine.
I'm really sorry for your loss.
Exactly. You're playing with powers you don't understand, Sophie, and I think you're being irresponsible with it. But in the meantime, the music's a brilliant drink. We can't forget that. Incredible music, brilliant music, some would say, to go along with that brilliant drink. But that really is going to be it.
That's clever. That's clever.
Well done.
Only took us 47 episodes to think of doing that.
Oh yeah, we've definitely never said it before.
Never. And that is going to be the end of the episode. Next week is going to be news. But for now, we're done. And I'm going to say goodbye.
Bye.
We did it.
Put a question mark at the end like you did, Alex.